Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our last town hall of the year, and a very important one. I'm going to make a few remarks as we get started, and tonight I'm going to apologize ahead of time. I'm going to go as quickly as I can because I realize after about 20 minutes you're sick of it, and but I want to be sure that I cover as much information as I can and give you as much information as I have. First things first, I want to clear up a rumor that we are selling Kahiti to pay for the water and sewer. But I just want to clear it up that that is not happening. Sorry. Yeah, I figured. So I just wanted to clear that up at the beginning. So tonight, if you want to go to the next slide for me, you'll see that I have basically, these are my talking notes, and the reason I put them up there is because if you go back tomorrow or the next day when they'll be online, you'll be able to pick up on this, and those who are not able to be here and will be watching this or looking at this later, they'll have this information because there's several things in here and steps that are important for you to know and understand. Most of these have been taken from my most recent conversation with TDEC and the comptroller and those departments, also with an attorney who oversees the, actually he is the chief executive of the utility board in Tennessee. The interesting thing in this conversation was, first of all, they don't really have a framework for utility boards. They have a, I asked them, so what's the framework? What are the points that I have to make to be able to have the water authority approved? And they basically said that your revenue has to exceed your expenses. You cannot operate in the red. And I said, okay, what else? That's it. So that was and one kind of an interesting thing. And they include a lot of things that budget has to include: depreciation and interest coverages and debt costs and all those things. The utility board and the comptroller meet 3 times a year, and it's those times where we would have to present our case to become a utility. And I'm going to go through this, and then I'm going to go back and talk about some steps, because some of this I think people are confused about, and I'm going to do my best tonight to try and make it as clear as possible, and I may even repeat myself a couple times. But please bear with me. It's not because I'm trying to be silly or obstreperous. I truly want people to understand this. They have to, the comptrollers, in my head, I had it in my head that TDEC does this, but TDEC simply looks at it and then turns it over to the comptrollers. The comptroller is the one that would approve water and sewer rates to make sure that they are sufficient for solvency. They used a term that many of the people who I work with were not really happy with. All your fees must be reasonable and justified. So somebody explained to me what reasonable is. Justified I kind of get, but reasonable and justified, those are the terms they use. There's no really established mathematical standard for how they come up with that, and the water authority can be ordered to complete a rate study if there are complaints. And basically that happens, or if that would happen, we would have to produce our budget and go back over it, what they have approved, and make sure that we've not changed from that. So to pause on that just for a second, there are more controls over the water authority raising or doing anything with your rates than there are with the POA. The POA has no restrictions in how we manage the water rates at all. So the other thing that they want to oversee is they will also, I'm probably jumping ahead here a little bit, but grants are not approved. The grant process goes through the grant process. It doesn't hit TDEC or the comptroller in any way. The process is already built into it to be approved for any utility board. What they do have to approve is any, if the water authority was going to go out and get a loan or use a bond to gather revenue, they would have to approve that before we could go into effect and do that. We reached out to one of the authorities that are already in place. He's been in place for about, or that community's been in place for about 7 years. And we asked them, probably probably the most pertinent question. So have you ever been able to get a grant since you've done this? And they, at this point, have accumulated $4 million in grants, and they have about $38 million in bond sales. More or less, they put that out for debt so that they could fund stuff. And they felt that the bonds were the easiest for the utility to use because they control the rate a little bit in terms of how much they're paying it back at, and they have the fewer restrictions. They don't have all the bank issues that they would by going to a regular bank and trying to get the same amount of loan. The comptroller also recommended that we order or we hire ahead of time a CPA that is familiar with the audits that the state does every year, so that our chart of accounts would be already set up in the appropriate manner, so that when we did the actual audit, it would just flow. It wouldn't be oh no, that needs to be down here and you put that in the wrong category and those kinds of things. We could just go ahead and get that done right at the gate. So those are just a few highlights of what they're going to do, and they are sending me a copy of a business plan and a debt request. Back to that part where if we wanted to get a loan and they would have to approve it, that's a specific form for me to submit. And the business plan is basically a one-pager. So it should be fairly straightforward, and as soon as that's done, we'll get that published as well. The steps, and this is the part that I want to get really clear. I know, and we're going to talk about this more, and I'm going to hit it 2 or 3 times because I want to be sure it's clear. The document that you are signing, or will sign or will not sign, is giving the board permission to convey the water and sewer to the water authority. That is an absolute fact. I don't want to portray that any way else. When you sign that, you are giving the board the authority, or your approval, for, if you want to call it that, to convey the water and sewer. However, I need to be really clear about this. That doesn't mean we're going to get the water authority, because we still have to go through the legislative point. Now, here's I guess the catch-22 is the right term. I have to have your signatures to be able to submit to the legislature a request for a private act to have a water authority. And at that point, 2 things can happen. If they take it, that goes to the legal counsel for the legislation. And if the legal counsel gets into our bill and starts changing the language and putting in things that we didn't have in there and didn't want in there, that's our first off-ramp, where we go, no, sorry, that's not what we want. I don't think that, and I would go to the board and say, I don't think this is in the best interest of the community because they've changed the language, and that implies something that we did not want. I'll give you an example. There's a term that, this is the example of the language we took out. There are no statements of eminent domain, as an example, in the act. So we can't magically say, yeah, we're taking half of your yard because we need to do X, Y, and Z. There is no eminent domain. And indeed, in this community, it's completely unnecessary. We already have easements and right-of-ways already in place. So that's one of the pieces of language that we took out that is fairly common within the water district documents. So anyway, I'm using that as an example of something they could put back in that we would go, no, that's not what we want at all. And that's my first stopping point to go, okay, are they messing it up? If they don't mess it up and we get the private act, again, that's it. We now have a private act. The water authority is still not in place. All we have is a private act that says we have the ability to create a water authority. Then we go to the comptroller. They have to approve our business plan. They have to approve our budget. And by the way, the budget I'm going to show you, they've already seen, and they're going to critique and give it back to me. So I kind of have a leg up before I go to them and know what I'm supposed to be giving them and not giving them. And then once we give that to them, they can say, yes, we approve it. Or they can say, no, we do not approve it. Or for whatever reasons, I'm fairly confident that I understand how this process works. But I want to be sure you understand if something changes and they come up with something that is not in what we've discussed and I'm showing you and we've talked about, that's another off-ramp. Once they've approved that, then I must come back to the board. Now we're circling back to that document you signed. They have to convey the property at that time. So up until this point, now we're months into this process. Up until this point, nothing has been conveyed. No material, nothing. Now, one of the things they pointed out that I missed in my original thought on this, as an example, in conveying this, the pipes and all those things, for instance, we have a water tank sitting up behind the townhomes. We have several pump areas that we have. We would have to deed that particular piece of land to the water authority because it's a physical piece of land that instrument is taking up. And so we would have to deed that piece to the water authority. Again, that's down the road. So in that process, we've been able to have several stopping points, even though you've given the board permission to convey, hasn't been done yet. And we can say, no, that's not what we want to do. But like I said, the catch-22 is, for me to even walk down this road, you have to be able to sign those, and 51% of you have to say, yep, that's what we want to do. Now, I know and I understand that all of you, this is new. This is not the devil you know. And so I want to be sure that I give you as much information as I can where I'm at. There is points in this that I don't know, and I've already mentioned a couple of them. I do not know what the legislative attorneys will do. They have already said, well, this is new. We've never had to do this before, so we'll have to look at it. I would admit that that makes me nervous. But that's the process we have to go through. Okay, let's bring up the budget. Now, I know this is, again, we use this term all the time. It's kind of an eye chart. But a couple things I want to talk about. And by the way, this is not my design. That's from the comptroller. This is what they requested. This is the format they requested in. These are the items that they requested. Now, a couple things that I want to point out because they're key, and I mean this sincerely. One of our options are the employees. The comptroller already said to us, in the first year, it probably would make sense because you're trying to figure out exactly what you're going to do, is to hire an attorney, hire a CPA to handle, we already talked about the audit issues, and to hire a director. Everything else beneath that, you could simply contract out, which in more practical terms means we would take our staff and contract them out to the water authority. Our water and sewer staff would contract them out to the water authority, and the water authority would pay us for their salaries with a slight margin, and that would be their staff in the beginning. Ultimately, and when I say ultimately, I mean it could be as long as 2 years. Ultimately, the water authority would probably want to have their staff completely under their wing and in their control directly. One of the reasons why I paused on this, and I agree with this particular model, is because I do not know yet how these employees would fall under the government health care and pension plan. And I don't have those details, and nobody on the phone call could really define that for me. And so I want to get that information before we move our employees over. In the water and sewer department, we have employees that have a lot of tenure, several years here, a lot of money invested in the 401k. All of these things I don't want to ruin for them. And by contracting that, I still keep control over that, and they still have what they already have right now as an employee. It still changes our budget. It still gives us a source of revenue. But I need to be clear, when we move this over and all these things you see on this chart come over, yes, we are losing, or we are losing the expense for the staff and for some of the equipment that we may or may not convey, but we're also losing 2 streams of revenue. And that's why if you look at the very bottom, I don't know if you can see that number, but in 2024, all things being equal, everybody pays their water bill, all the installations of sewer tanks stay approximately what we've already budgeted, the Water Authority will have an excess of $2,300,000. Now, that sounds like a lot of money, but they also have a lot of capital to take care of in the beginning. But we want to be sure that they're operating in the black. And based on the numbers that we currently have budgeted, and by the way, these numbers that you see in 23 and 24, 24 is out of our budget. It's not magic numbers. That came directly out. So all of this is just to give you an idea of what the comptroller is looking for and what the budget of a water authority would look like. Okay? As we look at this, this is our current capital maintenance budget going out to 2028. And I wanted you to see this just because I want you to understand a couple things that there is some controversy over. That controversy exists within the board and it exists within the community. And that is, what is our reserves supposed to cover? And there is one group that believes the reserves covers both capital and those reserve items. And I would argue that we have a reserve study that tells us how much every year we must be accumulating. $8 to $10 million, and you've heard us talk about this ad nauseum. So as we look at this diagram, you'll see that if we brought in $8 to $10 million in 2025, we're short $4 million. And this is why I'm saying we have to approach this differently. And the board has to make some decisions. So I'm not going to give you my definition tonight simply because it's not my vote. I don't want to try and play like I know what I'm talking about. The board has not made a decision on this, but I want you to understand where the confusion comes from. Currently, we have approximately 18 million in reserves. Now, theoretically, if you're going to take one camp's point of view, that is there only to repair, maintain, or replace. And there's a period at the end of the sentence. Most of the other POAs that I've worked for view this as also their capital funding. Meaning we want to put in something new, it's in the reserves too. Now that's not been our approach. And those are the things that the board is going to have to iron out and the finance committee is going to have to iron out and determine how we're going to handle this. So when we talk about 31 million for the water structure or the water and sewer structure, those are all in the first camp's point of view, those who believe that it's only for reserves. Those are all new items. They're not in our reserve structure. We do not have a raised sewer tank to control sewer. We do not have a raised water tank in our reserve studies that is already built into being built in the next 5 years. Those are new items. So under that particular philosophy, that money does not exist. We would have to accumulate that. In all of this, the Water Authority and doing it, well, let me put it a different way. I need to cut to the chase because this feels like I'm going around in circles. Here's the real reality. You're going to pay for it either way. Either way. Doesn't matter which way we go. The difference is if you go through a Water Authority, you'll pay for it over a longer period of time with the possibility that some of that funding will come in as a grant and you don't have to pay it at all. If we do it ourselves, I guarantee you every single penny will come out of your pocket. So that's the only advantage of all of this. I'm giving you all the details of how it works, but if you want the bottom line, that's the bottom line. That's the best you're going to get, is it's going to defer those prices out. They'll be able to get grants at a much lower rate than we can. Or a grant period, but they'll be able to get loans. They can sell bonds at a much lower rate than we can get them. Well, we can't sell bonds at all. So all of those things give us advantages, give you advantages. I say us because I'm one of the homeowners, of being able to pay for this long term as opposed to in a short period of time. And they have the ability to adjust. And the one thing that, if it gives you confidence, I'm not sure, you'll also have all these other departments overlooking their shoulder. Is this the right thing to do? We'll have to come in and bring all these reports that I hope some of you have looked at, the Jacobs reports about why we need these things, why these changes need to be made. All of those reports will have to be reviewed by TDEC to be sure, because we're back to that term. Are they reasonable, and can you justify them? So that's the crux of how this thing is going to function. That's the crux of the people who would need to be involved. Outside of that, I can tell you that that's probably 80% of how it's going to work. The reason I say that is because I still haven't asked all the right questions of all the right people. This is as far as we've gotten so far, to be honest about that. One last thing that I want to talk about, and this is where I'm circling back to the page. If we could bring up that. I've had some questions, and they are valid questions. I don't mean to pretend that they're silly. They're not. I don't know if you can even tell where it's highlighted. Hang on. There you go. That's the one. This paragraph is directly from our declaration. And if I read that just off the cuff, it says you're giving me permission to give anything away. Now, it does clarify to include water and sewer. Now, the next paragraph says it's the board owners, or the board, that will be the one to control giving away the water and sewer or conveying the water and sewer to a water and sewer authority. But that language is not what we put in there. That language is specifically from the declaration, and the declaration does say that 51% of you can give any of the common property away if you choose to. Now, I can promise you that is not the intent. The intent is nothing but the water and sewer. One of the things that I haven't covered that I know that people have brought up, they did not imply, they being the comptroller and TDEC, did not imply that we have to give the water authority anything. Money, whatever. It needs to function, but in the past we've discussed, well, we're going to have to give them some of our reserves. No, we don't. If you remember the budget that we just showed you, their first year, they've got $1 million in excess, $3 million or $2 million, almost $3 million in excess. So at that point, we really don't have to give them any reserves. Now, it may turn out that it's in our best interest to give them some of the reserves to move things along quickly, but it's not required. And that's why I wanted to be sure that we actually still are in control of the money that goes to that water authority. It's not something that we're forced to. There's no magic number that we have to give away. None of those things. And to be frank, that was a surprise to me as well. So I'm about done boring you, but I wanted you to understand what this form is actually for and what it's doing. You're not, when you sign this, this does not guarantee that we're going to have a water authority. Sorry. But it does guarantee that the board will have the right to convey if that becomes appropriate. Okay, I'll open the floor. See what you got.
You have to go to the mic.
Have to go to the mic.
Make sure it's turned on, button to the right, please.
There you go. You got it. Yep.
Hi, my name is Richard Pope. I live in Mialacqua. And I think we got to, look back at really what this does. You're only talking about two scenarios. We do it as we're doing it today, or we form a water authority. Mm-hmm. But there was a third one where we fix it up, we bring it up to specs, and we turn it over to Loudon Utilities.
That's correct. We still have to come up with the $31 million.
Well, correct. So now we're talking $31 million. Right now, round numbers, it's $238 million is in the reserve study for the water and sewage.
That's correct.
There's a total of $380 million in the reserve study. Mm-hmm. So 62+% of the reserves is the water and sewage. In the 22 budget, there was $2.9 million allocated in the reserves for water and sewage.
So
and then
I need to be clear
was,
about that. Let me pause on that because a lot of people have used that term. When we allocate something, if you remember, I just showed you the capital budget and all those things. We do not have a earmarked reserve. We have a pool reserve, and we have our budget set up for the capital, and there is nothing that is earmarked because we have a pool reserve. Now, we try and follow what our reserve study says. That's true. But to say that we've earmarked something is, now it would be accurate to say, in 2022, we plan to spend $2.9 million on water and sewer. That's an accurate statement. But to say it was earmarked or reserved, because what happens if we're wrong and it's actually $4 million? If we aren't pooling, we couldn't pay for it. We'd
Okay.
have to take that out of operating.
So the reserves was just 2.9 allocated to spend?
Sir.
Okay. So when I look at the Water Authority, as you said, really the only thing it gives us is the ability for hopefully free grants, cheaper financing, extended financing.
Correct.
Possibility of saving some money because there's no sales tax in what we buy and the equipment
Sure.
we use.
Sure.
So that'll come into the operations. But other than that, I understand the boards wanting to do a water authority. Because you're taking a $238 million asset liability off your books and putting it on the water authority books. And so it's just going from one pocket to another. We're still obligated to maintain that, to make sure it's operating from now in the future.
Well, I have to hang on a second. And when you say we, I assume you mean the Water Authority, not the POA. You're now a customer of
Okay,
another
so the
company.
Water Authority and the POA is the Tellico Village members.
Correct.
So right now, the Tellico Village members are obligated for the POA.
Correct.
When it moves from the POA to the Water Authority, the Tellico Village members are now going to be responsible for the Water Authority. And so now we've taken it off your purview to where you don't have that liability and the POA doesn't have that liability anymore. But my understanding is you and the board are going to control the commission because you hire those people. They'll be,
So let me be really, really careful and clear here. The board, as we have it set up now, again, hasn't been approved, but as we have it set up now, the board would appoint the members, but they would have term limits. And as they circle and cycle through, they would be homeowners of Tellico Village. So if that makes us in control, that was kind of the point, is that we didn't give that control over to the county or somebody else.
so who elects them?
The
Going in-
board appoints them.
Right, so the board will appoint them.
So I got to ask a question. Henry, I can't see you, but I'll ask a question. Does the county commission appoint the LUB board?
No,
Who does?
they do.
Who's they?
Yeah. Loudon and Neal CUP.
They appoint their own members. Okay,
They have to be living in Loudon.
yeah.
So if we gather the money, the 31 million, which we have to gather under the Water Authority or
Sure,
not.
yeah, that's
We
all
have
true.
to get it. We make these corrections, then we turn this over to Loudon Utilities.
Mm-hmm.
Then we eliminate that $238 million future liability from TVA members, and it goes now into Loudon. And Loudon has a much bigger economies of scale that the Water Authority is only going to service 6,200 homes.
Correct.
So where Loudon Utilities is tens of thousands of homes.
Pretty good. Pretty good
So it's going
idea.
to be much cheaper for us to go through Loudon, remove that liability, completely get the TVA members out of the utility business, get the board, get the POA out of the utility business, then to create a water authority to where we're just taking it from one pocket to the other.
So let me ask you a couple questions. Everything you've said is pretty much correct. And it's a point of view. If we give it over to Loudon, there's going to be some immediate changes that you may not be aware of. Number one, they will no longer service your septic tanks in your home. They will only service from the water pipe in the road out. Anything that goes wrong with your grinder, your pump, your electrical, you're on your own. And today, that is a function, and that would be a function of the Water Authority as well. Maybe not a big deal, don't know, but that's one of the first facts.
And it could be a function of the POA to maintain that and fix it on behalf.
Not if LUB takes it over. That's the thing. When they take over water and sewer, it is no different than me conveying, or you conveying it, not me, you conveying it to the Water Authority. You lose that say, period. POA loses that say. Everybody loses that say. If I wanted to have done that, to be direct with you, I would have gone to the county and say, I want to start a utility district and have you take it over. Because then the county would have appointed the water district people, the mayor of Loudoun County would be in charge of it, and they would take over all of that. You would still be paying into the pie, because if they have to make a correction or a repair or anything else like that, they're not going to pay it out of there. They're going to charge you to do that. As an example, right now we buy water from LUB, right? We are not paying for all the repairs, the pipes, everything else that's going on in Loudoun County. That does not affect our water bill at all. So that's one thing you need to understand, that we don't play in that pool. But if they took us over, then they'd be doing to us exactly what they do to the other parts of the county. They only bill them for their issues. We don't get billed for their issues right now.
So the last thing, can the water authority issue, special assessments?
Nope.
Just like the POA?
Nope.
And if they don't do their debt, then do they have control over our properties?
Nope. Only thing they can do, and this is, I probably needed to be clearer then, because you're asking me this question means I didn't make it clear. When we go to TDEC or the comptroller, and we want to go and get money, whether it's a bond, we want to get a loan from a bank, whatever that is, they have to approve that. And it's back to that, we have to justify that we're going to need that money. And then we have to justify what effect it has on your water bills.
But what's the collateral for the debt?
They have a revenue stream. That's the collateral.
Let somebody else talk. Well, you take the whole dang night. Okay, I'm Jim Brennan. I got a simple question you almost answered.
Okay.
I want to know how much
Hey.
power, I'm on the mic. I want to know how much power we, the people, are sacrificing in this. Now we have an elected POA that makes those decisions. Are we going to give some kind of unelected bureaucratic association the power to charge us, to indebt us, and so on?
So I'm going to put this in a way that I hope makes sense. They will not have the same power I have today. The board, I apologize for even using that term. I don't have any control over this. The board has the power to put, as I've talked about before, $100 on your water bill that you have to pay every month. They have the power to do that, and it's in our declaration that we have to do that, and we don't have to get a vote from you to do that. They don't have to. But if the water authority wants to change something, they have to go through all kinds of bureaucratic stuff. And those
Okay.
bureaucrats you're referring to are your neighbors.
Just, you can clear it for me quick. You're talking about a bureaucratic board doing what an elected board is doing now. That's the way I understand it. Oh, I'm sorry. I usually talk loud enough.
No, it's, and to answer your question a little more fully, that's the whole point of having the board appoint the board members of the water authority. That is the point of them being able to afford, because then they control who is on the board, good, bad, or indifferent, but at least the board that is electing them are people that you've elected. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm Christiane Wiltshire, and my question is on your analysis, if you've
Okay.
done any, such as you mentioned that the water authority may or may not get grants or bond sales.
Oh,
So
no, they
that
can get
affects
bond sales.
revenue.
Grants are the iffy part.
Okay. Have you done a best-case scenario where the water authority actually raises all of the money it needs plus a surplus? And then a worst-case scenario, what happens if they're short? Does that shortfall fall on us? Exactly, the residents.
So if there's a shortfall today, it falls on the residents. There's no change.
But the water authority is supposed to be governing itself
Correct.
to be a totally separate entity.
Absolutely
Even though
correct.
your board appoints that board, which to me doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, I'm okay
because it's
if you want to
not
change that. That was
independent.
just what we came up with.
Well,
that's
maybe you
because they're
need to come
appointed.
up with something else, something that's a little bit more functional.
Well, there's nothing unfunctional about it. It's just that if you don't want the current sitting or any other board that you voted into place to put those people in that board and appoint them, and then as they roll off, appoint new people, I don't know how to make that any different, because if you put them up to vote for them, it isn't going to be any different. It isn't going to change that, because the people who get on this board are really important, because
Of
they
course
are
they are.
acting autonomously. They're over here. They're not the board. They're not the POA. They don't have to behave by those rules. They have to behave by the state rules.
But then us, the residents,
Mm-hmm.
will not have any voting authority over that board. Is that right?
Well, that's true, but there is another point to that, and if you remember, I mentioned that if there's any complaints about the water and sewer being inappropriate, then there has to be a water study, and then people get involved and the state comes down. So it's not that you're completely out of control.
Okay, will you answer my questions about the analysis?
Yes,
Best case
the
and
worst case scenario is they have to go out and get a loan for $31 million, or sequence of loans for $31 million, and have to pay that back over 30 years. That is the absolute worst case scenario. The best case scenario is that they can do that in sections and possibly get grants to cover that as well. Everything tells us that, 4 million, 5 million is realistically possible. Now, we get more, I don't know. I'm just telling you what's out there.
In the business world, you have to come up with various analyses and
Sure.
find out. I mean, it's not like predicting in the future,
Mm-hmm.
but it's at least coming up with some numbers.
Sure.
What will us, the residents, be responsible for? I mean, you can come up with a number to
Sure.
let us know.
So let me put it in a couple ways. If the Water Authority goes through, as an example, June 30th, your water bill will be X. July 31st or July 1st, it'll be the same number. It won't change, because there's no need for that number to change yet. And they'll have to produce, that's another thing, that they have to be completely, every time they meet, open, and you have to have complete access to all the books, complete access to anything they want to do. If they have a budget or they want to do a bond, you have to be aware of that, and that's in an open meeting. All of that is completely at your disposal.
Okay, I don't know if I speak for everybody, but I myself, I
Mm-hmm.
would like to see those analysis.
So you're going to see those in a.
If we're responsible for paying for a
Sure.
shortfall, we need to know what
Perfectly
we're
reasonable.
getting into.
Yep. Nope, I have no argument with you,
Okay.
and the business plan will be put in the format. The reason I'm waiting is I want their format, because I don't want to give you something and then I have to change it, and you'll go, well, that's not what you showed us.
By the way, a one-page business plan is not a business plan, and you
I'm
know
only
that.
telling you what they said.
Okay.
Only telling you what they said.
Ryan Wethington, 215 Kiowa Point.
Yes, sir.
Okay, where did this $31 million figure come from?
Came from our engineers that have been doing studies since 2019 moving forward, and the most recent one, it was finished this year, excuse me. But they're the ones who are telling us what we need to do, and they're going out and giving us appraisals of what it will cost. And one of the questions nobody's asked me yet, but I'll throw it out there now, 31 million is in today's dollars.
Okay, so 31 million. We haven't gotten a price from a contractor, right? Not one.
Yeah, we have.
We have?
We have.
And what were they at?
That was where the engineer gave us the numbers from,
So the engineer went and got it from a particular contractor
a contractor.
and came up with this $31 million figure for the whole community, right?
No, it's for these projects.
Well, I know, but combined, it's for the
PSAC.
entire community.
Yeah, PSAC requested it, and they've been over it with, that PSAC is the committee that oversees this,
Right.
and they worked with them to come up
We
with
have
that.
8 neighborhoods in our community, right?
Right.
Okay, out of 8 neighborhoods, that's $3.8 million a neighborhood. That's just a rough figure based off this 31 million.
Sure.
Now, how much did Tokwa cost to build?
The building,
Yeah, the whole project, tear it down, build it, the whole thing.
I have no,
It was close to 3 million.
Yeah.
Right. So you're telling me we can't do this project in stages without going and trying to get funding
It's over 5 years. It is being done in stages. It's not 31
Okay.
million tomorrow morning.
But why 5 years? Why can't it be 10 years? We have newer neighborhoods in some of these projects that have probably got another 10 to 15 years left in their
Well,
life.
I'll put it in a different way then. In Tenasseee Hills, if one of my neighbors up above me turns on their shower and their irrigation system at the same time, their shower doesn't work. That's why it has to be done in a sooner rather than later
Because
time.
I mean, I talk to a lot of people, and I know people that live in Tenasseee Hills, and nobody's ever complained about that to me.
Well, I'd love to
I mean, I'm just
send you
saying,
all my
you know.
emails, but
Can I add something real quick? All of the infrastructure for Tellico Village was put in the very beginning, 36 years ago. So even the new construction are still connecting to original lines in a lot of cases. So the
Okay.
system itself is over
So,
35 years old.
What's to stop this water authority if they don't get funding? If they don't do what they intend to do? We have to fund them. Now we have to fund new employees on top of that.
those are not new employees. They're taking off of your current bill and
So we're
moving it
not
over to their
hiring
bill.
lawyers and we're not hiring accountants for
Oh,
this
sure.
project?
Those are new charges. You're absolutely right.
Those are new people. That's a new expense.
And we can contract those out, but it's a new expense. I'm not denying that at all. It is a new expense, but it can be contracted out.
Now, I read that there was a law passed in Tennessee in July 2021 where unincorporated communities could apply for grants and could apply for low-interest loans for water and sewer systems. Have
Doesn't
you
apply to
even
us.
looked into that?
Sure we have. Believe me, I'll put it a different way. If you guys can come up with a different plan that I haven't found, and I did look into that, and it's the reason why I made it clear in yesterday's board meeting, we did not get a grant. Loudoun County got a grant, and they graciously have moved that over and allowed us to use it. We were not approved for that grant, Loudoun County was. And so that's why we even have that money.
Well, so, and another thing, you said that Loudoun County would charge us, right, on our property.
Sure.
They wouldn't even come on our property for one, probably, right?
That is correct. They will not come on your
If they
property.
take it over.
Yeah.
But they come on our property for our electric, our meters and things like that. And
Sure.
they're considered a public utility.
Sure.
So why would they not be able to have access to that? If
As
they
far
take
as
over
I
our
know,
water
they
system?
don't do that anywhere, and I'll give you some examples. Wind River and Rarity Bay, they only manage to the line. They do not manage to the house
Okay,
at
but
all.
our community can take care of those pumps if we gave you guys the right to do it. Right?
So
Yeah,
now,
but it's once every 25 years. My pump was in the ground for 25 years until it blew up. It's not like it's going to be a monthly expense, you know, for every homeowner as
So,
far as that goes. You
let
guys
me-
can say, okay, it's going to cost you an extra $100 every time we need to come out and replace your pump.
it's not an extra $100.
Well, I know that. I'm just,
So,
right now,
and-
we're eating the cost of it all, right? To replace the pumps.
Well, actually, we have already had in place if you want to call it an insurance policy, where we are collecting in your water bill every month the money to be able to come out and replace that.
Right.
So-
Now, what's to stop the water authority, when they start this project,
Mm-hmm.
right, to raise our water rates by 50%, like Loudoun did? If Loudoun could get away with it, they certainly could get away with
No,
it.
Loudoun got away with it because they did a water study, and that water study demanded that they do that. And we got the lease number, by the way, but that doesn't matter. The reason they were able to do that and the reason they had to do that was they did a water study, and that was the result. And as I mentioned earlier, if there's a problem and there's complaints that we're doing something illegal here, the water authority is, they're going to come down and make us do
So did this water study, are they going to have to improve their system?
That's the reason.
No. That's
I
a
mean,
lot of money a
if
month.
you're asking me if I like all this, I need to tell you right up front, I don't. I
I
would
don't
much
either,
rather give
because
it to them
right
and
now,
walk
we're going to be
away.
paying $80 a month for water. Detroit's got some of the highest in the country. My mother pays $100. And if this water authority does what they're going to do, what I anticipate they'll do, we'll be paying over $100 a month relatively quickly.
Did you see your current water rates?
Yeah, I saw them. I saw the new ones.
Yeah, well, that isn't going to change at least day one.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're high, and I can't make that any better. And I don't mean to throw gasoline on the fire, But if you go out and read the water study, LUB has us set up next year to be $5.50 per 1,000 gallons. And
That's
I'm trying to
insane.
fight that tooth and nail.
Well, there's a commission that oversees rate hikes too in Tennessee.
That's
And they
correct.
have to put a moratorium on the rate hikes for 11 months until it's approved or overseen
Well,
and a
that's the part
recommendation's
where we're
done.
going to TDEC and the comptroller and going, come on, guys, what's going on?
Because that'll happen. Once we take on this utility board
Mhm.
and our rates go up like that, you can guarantee I will be doing that. I will be
And
filing
you
a
should. I
complaint to
have
the
no,
commission.
again, I have no argument about that. But you have that option.
Because, look, we've
Buy that.
increased, since I've been here 11 years, we've increased almost every year, 4 to 5%, the majority 5% of our
On water?
dues. No, our dues.
Our dues, yes.
Every single month. So every single year. So how is inflation not even tied to that? Inflation was like 3.2%. Inflation was 1.5 through some of that, but we still had a 5% increase. I mean, are we living in a different inflation bubble around here that I don't know about?
No, at the end of the month, it was 3.8 or 3.9.
Exactly.
Excuse
What are our
me.
dues going
Sorry,
up? 5%.
5%, that's correct.
I rest my case. And the water authority is going to do the same dang thing to us. You can bet on it.
So I want to talk about the alternative because I think it is important, and I'll be quick. Everything he said is at least reasonably accurate. The other side of that coin is us coming up with the money to do this ourselves is going to be just as painful and just as accurate. Us having to put $150 bill on your water every month is not something I want to do. Just being honest, I don't want to do it. And the board would have to make that decision. But that's how the money will be accumulated to be able to cover these things. I'm not trying to pretend that's good. I'm not trying to pretend it's even like I said, I don't want to do it. The water authority offers me an option not to do it.
Where are these 5% increases going then?
To their salaries.
It's going to the budget, not our salaries.
Exactly where it's going.
Gotta be going somewhere. Because they're heavy increases.
So when you get a chance, rather than have a debate over that, when you get a chance, go look at the budget and look through where the costs are and review those. Yes, people do get paid to work here, so there are salaries. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. My name's Dirk Leach. I live in Coyote Hills in the reserve section. And our water pressure is low.
Talk to the mic,
Oh,
sir.
I'm sorry. Our water pressure is low.
Yes.
But, I'll preface the end point of this discussion with, I think that you have asked the folks that live here prematurely to approve giving anything away
Sure.
without understanding the impact on our rates. And,
Sure. Got it.
and there will be an impact. There's no question. And I'll
Sometime,
just give you
absolutely.
a simple example. So your point about in June 30th, our bill will be X, and July 30th, our bill will be X,
Yes.
is a moot point. Doesn't matter. What matters is what it will be for the next 5, 10, 15 years.
You're absolutely correct. I can't argue that.
Okay. So if you just take the example of, we're going to borrow $31 million, okay? And you said correctly that grants maybe $4 to $5 million to offset that cost, but they're iffy. There's no guarantee.
I've never said otherwise.
So the base case is we borrow $31 million.
That's correct.
Okay. If we don't borrow $31 million and we pay that $31 million over the next 5 years, that equates to $5,500 per household,
That is also correct.
okay? If we borrow that money and we pay interest at 4.5%, which is roughly the going rate for a tax-exempt bond from a small entity,
The number I've been given is 2 to 4, but yes, go ahead. You're right.
not on the open market.
Yeah.
So 4.5% on a 30-year bond, if you treat that $31 million as also being amortized over that period,
Mhm.
At the end of 30 years, we're going to pay $11,500
Sure.
per household. Okay? So if you don't amateurize that $31 million over the 30 years,
Yep.
you'll end up paying $7,200 per household
Okay.
and still have a $31 million debt that you have to refinance. Okay?
Correct.
So, by definition, rates are going up, okay? They are going up.
Correct.
What you need to provide us in order to make a decision on whether to sign this or not
Sure.
is what the impact on rates is going to be, okay? So your base case ought to be, we borrow $31 million under a water authority, right? And we include the fact that they're going to build their own building, they're going to have their own equipment, they're going to have their own employees.
Yep.
They're going to have their own HR department.
Sooner or later, yes.
Sooner or later, and it's certainly going to be within 30 years,
Yes.
okay? So again, it doesn't matter what happens June to July. What matters is what happens in the next decade, okay? Once you have that information, we can make an assessment as to whether or not this is the right direction to go.
Got it.
Until we have that, you can't ask us to sign this.
I'm going to be able to go out at least 5 years, at least.
Pardon?
I said I am going to be able to go out 5 years.
When?
Working on it as we talk.
That's an unacceptable answer. When?
Well, the direct answer is I'm going to have to do it before I get to the comptroller. The comptroller has to be there and see it.
You have to be able to.
Hang on a minute, boss. You need to come up to the mic so everybody can hear you.
One thing that the FAC,
Please.
I just got an FAC member ask me to just remind everyone, is the 31 million is just what's needed for the next 5 years. There will be a lot more following that, just to remind everybody of that.
Well, but I mean, that actually plays into his point, is that we still need to have that running 5-year at least list of what it's going to be, how the possible increments of cost for the water will go up during those 5 years at least, and that will give you an idea of how it's going. I get that. I don't disagree with that at all. Please.
Okay, I was not able to go to the last town hall because it was scheduled on top of an event that had been planned for 3 months. So I reviewed the video,
Sure.
and there were 3 things that gave me concern. The first was actually mentioned by someone towards the end, and I never heard a reply from you. The video shut off. And that was 1 month we are being told, posited, and that our trash fees be included with our water fees, and looking forward that way. Then suddenly, the next month, capriciously, we're looking at a water authority,
I love
completely different. Did this just suddenly pop into your head, or were you hiding something from us?
You know, I woke up one morning and it seemed like the best thing to do at the time. No, I'm kidding. So here's the thing, and the trash was not capricious. It was, I've been trying to figure out a way to do that.
I'm
I
not
just said
talking about the trash
time.
as being capricious.
Okay.
I'm talking about,
Well, the water authority is still, this very day, an option, and only an option. And everybody, I don't know why, I think people believe I have more power than I do. But when I said this seems like a good idea to do, but it has to be played out and fleshed out, up until yesterday, I couldn't give you some of the answers I've given you tonight because I just didn't know. I haven't talked to the right people. I got them. Now, in terms of building a budget or a plan, that's already in my works. I'm working on that. I'm trying to be sure. But one thing I have to keep telling people, if I give you a budget and the comptroller hasn't approved it, I'm telling you that that's not the bottom line, because until they're done, it doesn't matter what I put on there. Now, I'm trying to work with them to give that to them, so what you see is what I'm going to give them, and so you know that's what he gave them, and if they approved it, great. If they didn't, great. In terms of a project plan or a business plan, that has to be produced. I have to deliver that. And as I keep promising you, and as long as I can, everything I do, I'm bringing to you first. All this discussion, I'm bringing it to you first. And if you think it's not what you want, I am happy to go to the board and say, it's not what they want to pay for it themselves. I don't have an argument with that. I'm looking for the best thing I can do for this community. That's it. There's a period at the end of that sentence. And if it's not the best, then I don't want to do it.
Well, what you just said plays right into my first point, and what the last gentleman said is that when I reviewed that video, you were pressuring people to sign the agreement for the Water Authority, with the conveyance, but you wanted your 51%.
Sure.
And yet you say you don't know anything, the complete ramifications of that now.
Well, I'm telling you that at the time I said that, I didn't know the complete ramifications, and I'm telling you today, because you're still coming up with questions that I don't have answers for, I can't give you, and I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say, I know, but I don't. So I'm going to give you the facts that I have, and I'm going to keep chasing these until I get them. The catch-22 that I'm playing with, and I honestly and truly understand that you need to see a budget, you need to see a plan, you need to have some idea where this is going over the next 5 years. And if I can do better, I'll do better, but I'll give you 5 years at least.
So why were you pressuring us beforehand?
It's not a matter of pressuring you. I'm telling you the facts. I can't move forward without 51% saying, yes, we are willing, not that we are willing to convey. And if there's something that comes up that goes, that's not going to work out. As an example, let's just say I do that 5-year plan and all of you magically have signed the 51%. And when I do that, his numbers come out to be true, and it's not to your advantage to do this. Over time, you're going to pay more. Pull the plug. That's it. Pull the plug.
Okay, but I definitely got a sense of high-pressure salesmanship at that meeting. And
Well, I mean, I don't want you to, if I did, then I'll apologize to you
And in
personally.
fact-
That's not the point. I
and-
wanted to give people the understanding, this is what it will take. That's it.
And Pat White was doing his Mafia Don
Oh.
imitation. With his your nice little water bill, pity something should happen to it, like $100 if you don't sign.
Well, yeah.
Right, Pat? That's what he said, I heard it.
Sure. No, I got you. I was
And
there.
my final point that gave me cause watching this was when you started talking about an added bureaucracy.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about having continuous improvement, and anybody who's done continuous improvement, Six Sigma, QBS, whatever you want to call it, knows that you simplify things. I had the misfortune of working for the largest engineering and construction company in the world at the time that they decided, as they kind of managed by bestseller, that it was time to re-engineer, and I had to facilitate many meetings with different departments. And the one thing that came out of all of those meetings, if you want to save money, you cut the bureaucracy. You don't add another building. You don't add another HR department.
Got it.
You don't do that. In fact, they combined the departments. They combined from the different business offices in the different
Sure.
parts of the country. So what I'm hearing from you is empire building, as we used to call it, where somebody goes ahead. And I think one of the other gentlemen already mentioned you're taking from one pocket and putting it into the other, but along the way you're building another bureaucracy in order to do that. And I'm not quite sure why you would need to do that when you are essentially talking about keeping it in-house, divided into two separate, into another department. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff Berger, I'm in Toqua, my wife Elizabeth here. We've got a lot in Mialakwa as well. I guess to start off, I would say it is a tough job you got there, Chet. I mean, there's a lot of misunderstandings in this room, both sides. I can hear both ways, right? I hear people standing up and using 238 and the word liability after that. You know what? It's not a liability. That's the stated asset. Assets and liabilities are different. We don't know what the liability. What's that?
Talking to
Yeah,
Mike.
we don't know what the liability for these assets are. We got a replacement value per your audited statement that, actually the footnote, which is very interesting, because if you go to 2021, we put those assets on the book at $2.5 million in a 5 to 10 year useful life, I want to say. And then we restated that in the footnote, and it went up to 238, and those useful lives went from 20, I'm going to say, no, 5 to 45. I'm roughing it out. You have the numbers, I got them there in my
Sure,
folder.
I got you.
That is a huge increase, where we thought that these assets we owned were worth $2.5 million just a year ago, and now they're worth $238 million. I got a big question around that. Now,
Okay.
my first question is, did that come out of the reserve study?
Answer
Because-
to that is yes.
Okay, so the accountants just cut and paste the same footnote from the previous year because they attributed that to the insurance work, due diligence that was done on the replacement value. It was actually out of the reserve study.
That's correct.
Okay, great. So let's just get clear. Assets are things we own. Liabilities are things that we owe, right? So we can't conflate them. We don't know what the unfunded future liability for these assets that we own is. As
That's
far as
correct.
it's not been stated anywhere. Right.
And that would be an accurate statement.
Yeah, that's what we frankly need to know at some level in order to model this future water authority. Because this 31 million we're talking about, that's not what is going to get saddled with this water authority. Nobody is going to walk into that deal and say, okay, here's your five-year plan, your pile of poo, we're going to fix it for you. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. It's a much bigger number. And if I remember correctly, I've seen somewhere numbers that go back to the reserve study that, 8 to 10 million a year. We took the 9 million midpoint for our budgeting. I think that's correct. Two-thirds of the assets, one of the things that stuck with me, Chet, was when, I feel pretty good about it, in the August meeting, where basically one of the finance committee members said, you ought to all be proud here because all of the assets we own, you have a 60,000 pro rata share of those assets, okay? Two-thirds of that are water and sewer. That means every one of us in this room right now, we own $40,000 of assets individually. But do we really? We don't, because they sit somewhere on a depreciation schedule, okay? And that's what Chet's trying to tell us. What he's trying to tell us is they're not worth that. But what we're not getting, I think, is what it's going to take to move those assets forward for 30 years. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because on the report, as I recall, it said something like $100 more a month for all of our assets, for the reserve of all of our assets going forward over that 30 years, if I recall the numbers. And you guys can double check me on the numbers. And that works out to $1,200 a year, and, that gets us, that's how they got to their 8 to 10 million, right? So if we set aside 8 to 10 million in reserves for all of our assets, according to the study, we got it handled. Okay, that was my August. And then in October, right, I'm now told, and please forgive me, I'm going to try to be as appropriate as I can because I know how difficult, I've been on your side of this, I've been on boards, I've worked in accounting and finance my whole life, I've done a lot of different things. I'm told that we got to rush to get out of here. This thing is an albatross around our necks. That's the way it feels to me. I don't know if it feels to you guys. It's like, let's get the hell out of this, excuse my French.
Yep.
Okay, where I was told it's worth 40 grand. So I'm going to say right here, I don't think it's worth 40 grand. It may be worth 20 grand each one of us, or 10, I don't know. Let's look at that depreciation schedule. Let's get that number from our finance folks. Let's also do a future value calculation based on all of this future liability, because we haven't reserved for it. We know what that is. I guarantee you, coming from the accounting background, that's one of the things the accountant that we're talking about hiring is going to do.
Correct.
before we put this thing into the,
Well, we already have depreciation schedules, so
so let me
that,
go back.
that's not
This-
that hard
These
to
were
come up with.
my response and some of my neighbors. I didn't mean to get all amped up, but I get, I just want to make sure that we understand. So the last neighbor that stood up, and I've talked to 50 neighbors, they've all got this thing wrong. And they got it wrong for a reason. And you're great about this, Chet, because you're still figuring it out on the fly, right?
It's true.
I think at this point, this conveyance idea is a really bad idea. The reason for that is that people don't know what they're conveying, and they're not getting full disclosure. And by the way, having done a lot of deals in my life, buying companies, divesting assets, disclosures are really important. So here's my headline. I don't like our process, okay, particularly the conveyances. I really like the idea, and I want to commend you and the board and the management group for pursuing it, because actually, I could see how I could work. I could kind of do these numbers in my head and say, I think this may be better for us. So I like it. I don't like the process. The communications, unfortunately, are really difficult. It's only been, so in October, forgive me, I don't know when you put the first memo out on this, because there's no date on it. But the one that I got today or yesterday in the mail with the conveyance form doesn't have a date on it. But let's call it October 23rd, which I think is the first time you trotted this out. So from October 23rd to November is 5 weeks. Here we are. We're now, what, 2 months into a process? At the November meeting, you guys, and I understand what you're saying, you were pressing for people, you're handing out the conveyances, you're trying to get this going. I understand why. Okay, but even at that time, we did not know what we were conveying. There was so much misinformation, even at this meeting. I bet you there's people here that still think, for some reason, they own these assets. If they give them away, we're giving them away. That's not true. And people here in this meeting, they're talking about, okay, we're going to control the board. We're not going to control this board. We may have rights to elect certain people. They're accountable to frankly, to the legislation, the statutes, and so, and other people like the PUC that oversits on top of them. Because they're going to get sued if they don't do the right thing. So just because we're in their ear and we don't like the way they're raising our rates, that's a bunch of hooey. These people are independent of us, okay? Even though they may be our same neighbors. And I know this because I'm a utility investor, okay? And I know how these things work. So, I don't like the process. The communications have been rough. I don't think we've done all of our due diligence. This has been great. Every meeting, there's more due diligence, there's more information. I think that's great. But I need to know the asset value. I need to know the present value of liability. I want to see some business modeling, and a couple of people have talked about this. I'm a little hard of hearing, so sorry if I missed it. But we ought to be able to pro forma. Pro forma means you ought to be able to project forward with and without certain categories on your balance sheet, your income statement, your budget, and so on, because we're carving out some assets. We're carving out some people. We ought to be able to pro forma what that looks like. And we ought to be able to pro forma as well, business model, what this looks like under certain scenarios. So someone said, he was trying to do some present value on bond financing. Well, look, you can say, and that was great information that you gave us about, okay, 10% roughly, didn't do the math, but could get grants, okay? And then 90%, okay, so let's do 2-3 scenarios. We get this amount of bond financing at this rate, at that rate, or this amount of free government stuff, and we do 10%. Let's model that out. And let's take my number that I'm getting, hopefully from you guys, and put that into the liability equation, because that's where we're going to go borrow. We're not going to borrow $31 million. Okay? Let's just be clear about that. Disclosures.
I think that's what the lady was asking about earlier too as well.
Okay. Disclosures. We basically have to put something on this form document that you're asking people to sign. What's that? Am I done? Are you trying to?
Well, be quick, and then there's other people waiting.
Okay, well, I'm just saying that we've got a fiduciary responsibility of the board, obviously the executives and our POA, to get this thing done right. And thus far, there's things that are not, and it can't get done the way that it should, so I think we should just back away. We need to back away from this process, take a little time, stop hunting down these conveyance forms, and keep doing what you're doing, because I love the idea.
Hi, my name is Greg Sawyers, and I live in Tokwa. I think Beth said I live on the finger. I wanted to come out, and by the way, I appreciate everything you just said. It was very good, and I support what you say about making sure we have good information and we take time. I have a 40-year utility history before I came to Tokwa. And at that utility, I did everything from finance, accounting, all the way through customer service, and I did acquisitions and all kinds of things that you can do in a utility. You either couldn't hold a job or I was good enough to move around. So I appreciate your comments at the beginning about the employees. That was my main concern, is that when you're going through a transition like this, the worst thing you can do for your employees is disrupt them and their benefits and their seniorities and all those things. So I just stress upon you to make sure that you continue to do that. As I've reviewed this, it's never a bad idea to wait and make sure we have good and accurate information for everybody to go on. I think that's a good idea. I do support the idea of a water authority. My utility experience would tell you that that's the best, least cost way to manage assets going forward from a finance perspective. And a water authority is the best way to handle and mitigate costs of an aging system. So Beth mentioned earlier that we have a 36-year-old system. I'll tell you that the plastic pipe that's in the ground has got a 40 to 60-year useful life. So we're approaching that, and that's why you're going to see more costs go up over time. Those costs have to be paid for. I also, as a former utility employee, would tell you that my job in acquisitions was to get utilities like these, acquire them within our utility so that we could spread our cost and their cost over a greater customer base. So if we go to the Loudoun County Utility Board and they take us over, they have costs that they're sharing to all their customers, and those will become our cost, plus our costs will come on. So we're not escaping anything, and you're not getting a benefit of a larger scale. While you are in some things, the rate structure is not going to impact that. So I'm just telling you from my experience. The three benefits I see of this is we're going to have lower possible borrowing costs and/or no costs related to certain grants and things that are available. So and not only lower borrowing costs, but you're going to be able to extend those borrowings for a longer period. And while we're all paying longer over that period, on a month-to-month basis, our costs are not going to go up as great if you get a 30 or 40-year finance compared to the 10 and 20-year financing unsecured that we're doing now. Unsecured financing is what we're getting today. So long-term, you're going to have a better financing. So our costs, which, by the way, costs are going up regardless of what we do. It's just how we want to manage those. You also are going to get an independent audit from the Public Utility Commission. They're going to scrutinize the costs and structures before any rates are approved. So even after the utility board makes a decision to raise rates, it has to be adjudicated. And that adjudication will determine whether it's going up enough or too much. And as a person, I don't have, or as a POA member, I don't have the ability today to object other than by replacing people on a board on a 3-year rotational basis to be able to determine what my costs are. If this goes in a water authority, I and everyone in this room will have the ability to go to the consumer counselor in the state of Tennessee who represents customers of that utility and be able to voice our concerns, and they're required to put those forward to the adjudicating body to be able to determine if our rates and charges that have been put forth are just. And so for those three reasons, I think we're better as a water authority than in this current structure we are today. And that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. My name's Barry Coro. I live at 404 Oneida Trace in Tomotley Coast.
Yes.
Chet, just very thankful for you doing this. I'm really surprised you don't wear a bulletproof vest, though, when you're up in front of everybody.
Asbestos underwear.
Yeah, very good, very good. Okay, so my simple way of looking at this on a 30,000 foot level is basically, if this goes through, the water authority will become a separate entity run by itself.
That's correct.
We will turn all the assets, the pipes and so on, the pumps, what have you, we'll turn those over to them. And on day one, they'll probably, whatever the rates are at that point is probably what's going to be in effect for 2024 to begin with.
Correct.
Okay? So, and they would be responsible then for managing that entity, everything that's in it, financing replacements and so on. And one of the advantages of doing that, a big advantage, is the possibility of getting grants, that we're encumbered to do that, okay?
Right.
So I think that I'm assuming a small question, just for clarification. If the Loudon Utilities takes it over, they wouldn't service anything from the road in.
Correct.
Okay. Will the Water Authority do that?
Yes.
Okay.
We've set it up to where they have to give the same exact service that we are currently giving.
Okay. So is there any liability on the POA's part, once this is established, for us to have to provide additional funding for them? Or is that totally on them?
So the way that works is that, back to what the gentleman said earlier, when they come through and they say, here's our rates that we want to spend, they have to be able to justify that.
Right.
And if they're too high, they're going to go, no, go back to the drawing board and bring us something different.
Okay.
If they're too low, they're going to say, based on the information we have, you're going to have to raise those rates higher than you have anticipated to.
And that I understand, but that wasn't my question. The question is, once this is done and they're a separate entity,
Yes,
the POA does not provide additional funding for them. Is
that is
that correct?
correct.
That was
Where I
my,
was going at is that once this is in place and we go through the process of moving this over into its own entity, at that point, they are responsible
Right.
to come up with that money. And everybody has a fear. Well, yeah, we get that. They're going to come after us and raise our bills and charge us for it. Fair
Okay.
statement, because they are going to have to get the money from somewhere.
and the
and-
other thing about this is if we maintain it, we're not allowed to pledge assets to borrow money, nor are we allowed to have a special assessment unless 2/3 of the property owners vote for it.
All of those things are true. And I
And-
need to be clear, when you said we also cannot convey a revenue stream, meaning our assessments, as collateral either.
Right,
It's not
right.
just our,
But the point
Physical
is,
assets.
trying to get 2/3 approval for any of those is.
that's a
is-
pipe dream.
Yes, it's a pipe dream. Okay, so and just summing it up, simply that was it. One of the things that I looked at, I went into the website, and it may be my fault, okay? I looked at the questions. They're very good questions,
They are.
but I didn't see any answers.
There
Okay?
should be answers on all of those. Every question that sits on the webpage should have an answer. You have to expand it to see the answer.
Oh, okay, so I have to take that and expand.
full answers because we're still waiting on the answer, but they got answers.
Okay. And just as a last point, I think that we're a little premature. I think what one of the villagers said was they felt pressure. Well, when you get a letter in the mail asking you to sign.
Yep.
And you don't have the answers,
Sure.
okay, I think it was premature, okay? And what I would like to see is, being in strategic planning, what I'd like to see is a real timeline that says this is the the timing that we have to provide to give a total analysis, the pros and cons of each, including financial, okay?
Sure.
And then we're trying to get through by end of June, is that correct?
No, and I'm going to give you the quick timeline. We have until February 15th to go to the legislation and give them this for this year.
Yeah, okay.
And so my timeline is between now and January 15th, I have to give you all the information I can possibly get my hot little hands on and have it prepared, to include all the things I would have to give to the comptroller.
Would that would also, you're going to have comparisons?
Sure.
In terms of that?
Right, and we already, I mean, a lot of the things, like for instance, we have a pro forma of what would our current budget look like if we pulled water and sewer out. We got that. And I've already shown you that budget, and that literally is numbers from our 24 budget pulled out and put into that. Then what everybody else is asking for is, I think, fair, and I'm hoping to get those answers, is, okay, if we go and we keep it, what's that going to look like over the
Exactly.
next 10 years, 5 years? And if we give it away, here's
What's
the
that look like?
costs, and here's the assumed liability, here's the assumed cost
Yeah.
of whether we get a loan or any of that stuff. And that's what I have to get to you by January 15th.
Yeah, that's a tough
Because if I
problem.
can't, then, and this is another one of those off-ramps, if I can't, and you decide you don't believe you want to do this, then I've got to keep going, if I believe it's the right thing to do after we look at those numbers again. Then I'll put it off for another year, and we'll keep going, and I'll keep explaining it to you, and we'll have to come up with some other things to fund the water that has to be done this coming year, and we'll do what we can.
Yeah, I think to get 51% of the property owners to approve this, you have to have that comparison, because I don't think you'll get 51%.
And I don't
without it.
disagree with you, and that is the goal. Now, I have to tell you, I, at this point, see that I have three things I have to do. Oh, wait, I didn't finish my timeline. So, February 15th, we give it to the legislation. They will vote on that before the middle of March.
Yeah.
So, for argument's sake, they approve it. I have to have all of my stuff together for the comptroller to come and say, okay, you've been given a private act, but that doesn't mean anything. How are you going to run it? I've got to give that to them by March 15th. And I have to have that ready apparently ahead of time, because y'all are going to want to see that. I want you to see that. And then that will be the time frame at March 15th. And if I can't get it to them then, I'll have till the next meeting is in July. And then we'll start this. The idea of July 1st, all of this, by the way, I need to take 2 steps back and say, this timeline was given to me. It is not the timeline I wanted. It was not what I wanted to do. The legislators said, here's your timeline. Have fun. Let us know when you're done.
Okay.
Has to be in by February 15th, or we're not going to vote on it.
The timeline I was talking about is getting up to January 15th. What has to be done, who has to
Sure.
do what, and so forth.
Sure.
And how are you going to present it, so that we can have enough information to make the right choice in voting.
Sure.
Thanks so much.
I may have to have a town hall different than the last part of the month. I may move it up into the middle of January. I don't want, and I'm going to keep saying it until someday you actually believe me, or you're just annoyed by it and so you go with it. I'm not going to give them anything you haven't seen first. Just not going to do it.
My name's Leanne Phillips. I live in Toqua, and I just want to, thank everyone who's done all the work here. I understand running on tight timelines, particularly when you're dealing with holidays. My questions are more towards, I favor the Water Authority because I think it gives us some pretty significant benefits with respect to financing, and I'm just not familiar with how, what kind of leverage you could put into an entity like that. And then even on top of that, when I look at the cash flow, and you're talking about 2.3 million in 2024, is that like a leverage number that I could use to say, okay, 5 times, 10 times that cash flow? Is that looking at that correctly?
That's the part that I need to give you so it's clear.
Okay,
I mean, my answer off the cuff is yes, but I don't think that's accurate. I think it's more than that.
okay. Because I just, when you do that, even if you do 10 times that cash flow, you're not getting close to the 31 million that we need.
Sure.
And so is there a way to bifurcate this and put some assets in and maybe some assets that don't go in, or do it in stages over time?
The honest answer to that is I don't know.
Okay, and then
That's not something that I've heard them offer
Okay.
or say you could do this. Doesn't mean you can't. I just haven't heard them and I haven't asked that question.
Okay, and I guess my last comment would be, perhaps I'm not thinking about this correctly, but if we control the board on the water authority because we elect them and appoint them or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're members of our community.
Yes.
I'm kind of struggling with how it wouldn't fall into a consolidation into our financials. It feels. We won't control the board.
We will
of-
control who gets on that board. But once they're on that board, we have
We
no
have-
control.
They have their own
They have their own
unanimous
rules and
decisions
regulations they must follow, and they have
Okay.
their own dance.
Okay,
We're not, the only hand we have in it is putting them in that position. That's
okay.
it.
Well,
Position.
again, I appreciate all the work that's been done because it's a huge hurdle that you guys have we have more information than we could have imagined, but we need a lot more. So
Sure,
thank you very
got it.
much.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Dave Landrum. I live in Toqua. I want to be bluntly honest here. Oh, it moves? Good.
Well, that way you don't have to bend
Yeah,
over.
thank you. First, I am in favor by concept of the water authority.
Sure.
But the process that has been used here is going to kill the water authority because of lack of information, lack of honesty. You get up there and you start talking about things, and you say, well, I can't do it because I don't know. I can't do it. You can do budgets. You don't have to do them on one page. You can do them for multi-year. You can do them on multiple pages.
Sure.
That makes sense, and then put it at the end in the format the state needs. To use this, I don't have the state format, and I don't want to do it twice, is pure BS, in my humble opinion.
Sure.
It says you're not doing your job. You need to get this done precisely. You need to get budgets out. They need to be as accurate as possible, but just assumptions given at the bottom, so when they change, there's a logical explanation. Everything in Tellico Village, since I've lived here 4 years, is said something's going to be for multiple years. It turns out 1 year that's changed. There's a lack of communication, the communication to the POA members is absolutely terrible. The telegram, where you put it out every once in a while, and you change.
Every Tuesday.
Every Tuesday, and you change one item and you leave all the other items in there. It's a very, very unprofessional way to communicate. Now is the time, if you have that tight timeline, to be getting those budgets out to the members in an effective communication, not on a screen, but an effective communication.
So what would you define as effective communication?
Well, I would define email, effective communication, in which it's where it's put out. There's a budget, highlights of the budget. What are the assumptions of the budget? What is the fixed cost can we assume for this water authority to be? Because that's what makes it a good idea or a bad idea. Because
Sure.
if the fixed costs go too high, then it's a bad idea. If the fixed costs don't exceed the benefits of grants, the benefits of cheaper financing, then it's a good idea. But you have not done one presentation where you've given any numbers on that. Last meeting I asked about fixed costs. You told me you didn't know.
Well, I do know now, so we'll get that. And I'll stick to my timeline. By January 15, you will receive, all of you have access to, I'll put it that way, a budget, a plan, and the options.
Thank you.
No worries.
But unless you change the process, I don't think you're going to get this through, because the process is smokescreen. The process is.
I want to understand something, though. See, this is the part where I'm really confused. When I tell you I don't know something, I'm being blunt and direct. When I do know something, I'm telling you that. I don't understand the smokescreen thing.
The
That's the part.
smokescreen is I can't do the budget because I don't know the format.
No, I have the
That-
format.
well,
In fact, the
that's-
format
that's
I
what-
showed
those are
you,
your
that's what I
words.
said. What I
Those
said
are
was
your
I can't
words.
do the plan, or I've been advised. Let me rephrase that. I can do anything I want if I choose to. I have been advised that there is a proper business plan that they will accept. And if I see that and it gives you that information, then I'm going to use it. But in the process, I'm already working on that business plan, and I'm going to fill it in. If they don't send me a bill, a format that makes sense, I'm going to give you what I say is the plan, and I'll show you their format. So I have no problem with what you're saying is that you want to see all the details. You want to see all the nickels and dimes. I'm good with that. I'm okay with that. The business plan is something that is going to be driven by two things: what's best for us and what they require.
Okay. Now, next point. You said the person in front of me, or a couple of people in front of me, you have a pro forma budget without with the Water Authority or the POA budget?
Mhm.
Have you shared it?
Have not?
Why not? Because it's been asked for.
Sure. So, as we learn what we can and cannot do, it has been changing. We're now at that point where we know pretty much all the moving parts, and I'll be happy to change that and show, and that
Would you like
actually
my
will
email
have to be a
address so
part
you
of
can
it.
send
Huh?
it? You want my email address so you can send it?
I'll send it out and to everyone. This is the one thing I
When?
don't want to get into, is start sending it to individuals.
That was a snide remark because it could have been sent. If it's,
Sure.
you're
So here's
not
the thing, guys.
sending information on a
as you are
timely
telling
basis
me-
for your timeline.
Sure. I'm going to send you out, as I said, on the 15th, you'll have that information. That may not still be enough, but it will be all the information I will be able to accumulate before it goes to the legislation. And that's all I can ever offer you. And that will include all the things we've talked about. It will include next year's budget with that removed, and we'll make sure that that is clear and clean and obvious to you where that's been removed, with all the footnotes that go along with that, so you know that's what they took out. And you'll see the other pro forma, which shows what's that water authority going to be like, what's it going to look like, what are the projected costs based on our current costs for 2024, what's their projected cost going out, and what's it going to cost us to go and do a bond. Is that really going to be appropriate for us or not? Everybody tells me it is, the numbers tell me it is, but until we put it out there 5 years, it's a guess. So you'll get all that before or on January 15th. And it will also be done in a town hall as well. We'll send it out as an email, and we'll do it as a town hall.
Send it out before the town hall a few days so that questions can be asked from the budget, rather than putting it up at the town hall, and
Sure.
that way you can't have good questions.
Makes
Timing
sense.
is very important when you want legitimate questions.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'll be brief. I'm Bob Mitchell from Tellico,
Yes, sir.
and I was with you last night at the board meeting. You got tacit approval to go ahead and make some contacts, provide due diligence into some of the questions that have come up tonight. I won't be redundant to the requests for
More data.
the elements of the business case that we asked for last night, that
Yep.
we couldn't get to many of the elements of a business case to make any sense out of this. So one of the statements to the board last night was we were premature in the process. We were skipping ahead. So I offer you two potential action items. One is, I think you should retract what just got mailed out, which asked for a broad endorsement of authority to go get more information. And I think it could be easily reworded simply to ask for the authority to make the contacts with whomever has the information to get the facts, to then formalize a business case, but nothing more than that. There's too much language in the current mailing that people can't agree to, at least I can't. And with that action item, then, we would have something formal to look at, would have the pros and the cons, would have the budget, would have 5-year projection. The 31 million keeps getting kicked around, and that could be a progressive state. It doesn't all have to be in a
Absolutely
bag
correct.
of money on the first day. So
Absolutely correct.
That's my 2 cents worth.
So I will answer that question, and I'm going to have to get you all that information by the 15th, because the document that I sent out to you is what is approved by the state and is required by the legislation for us to do that. I'm not arguing with your point that there's too many questions in that you don't have enough answers to be able to sign that. That's why I'm saying I get it. But I can't, for you to give me permission to go look at it doesn't mean anything to the legislation. I already have the permission to go talk to these guys. They're people I know and I work with them. It's just getting their time and getting through the numbers to do that. So, I appreciate your point. I really do. I'm not trying to be facetious. It is, I understand your position, and the form itself, unfortunately, retracted or not, that is the form that we will have to sign or not, sooner or later. And hopefully I can get you the information by January 15 that you can go, yep, looks good, or nope, I don't want to do that.
Well, let me clarify. February 15th is an arbitrary date. I've seen nothing that says there is urgency to the extent that it has to be done within this next year. We've got life expectancy of the current system.
True.
We don't have to go to an arbitrary deadline. It would give you the opportunity to dot the i's, cross the t's, and make a good presentation of pros and cons, the budget over at least the next 5 years.
Mhm.
We're lacking competitive assessment in our strategic plan for Tellico. We really don't have a complete, what I would describe and define as a business plan. What we're trying to do here is a business case, which is subordinate to an overall umbrella plan. So there's a lot of work to do. I compliment you for trying, but I think we're out in advance of the Army.
Okay, so I got lots of to-dos.
Okay, thanks.
Kevin Savage from Chattooga Coves. And I think that we can all agree that the 60s are alive and well in here tonight. There's still a healthy distrust of, and that's part of the reason that we as Americans are Americans. We all have that little I'm from Missouri, prove it to me.
Yep, all fair.
And I think that's, if anybody has a come away tonight, it's that if the document that was sent to us, which is, anything that's written in legalese is confusing, it's intimidating, it's off-putting.
All of the above.
Yes. So if we're going to sign something, we're going to need a lot of comfort that comes from outside that document that we're signing, because the document itself is going to fall short.
Pretty much what I think everyone has said.
That's kind of what I'm saying. The last thing I was going to ask you, and in my subdivision, in the street that I live on, I've had people come out to the house. They're workmen. They put in water systems. They put in irrigation systems and stuff. And the one thing they've always told me in the past was, man, you got great water pressure. This water pressure you've got here is just, people in this, would love to have this. And just in the last less than 2 months or so, I'm noticing that I don't have water pressure coming out of my faucets. And, it got me to thinking, are we having to do because of we're all saying that, we're running out of water, blah, blah, blah. The systems can't handle the flow. We need more pipes. We need more this. We need more that. And we've got all these houses that are being built, and people keep scratching their head. In my household, I hear it too. Well, why are they still building these houses? If we've got a problem, why are they letting them build all these houses? Why isn't there a moratorium on that? Ooh, I can't answer to that question. But what I'm wondering is, is the reason that my water is now not the pressure that it was is because you guys are having to rebalance the valves so that somebody else can get some pressure somewhere in the village? I'm just asking.
So the answer to that is no.
Okay.
It's an ongoing problem, and I can be really more specific. If you're looking toward Lenore City, if you live on this side of 444, you're pretty much going to have fairly decent water pressure somewhere around 100 pounds per square inch. If you live on that side of 444, up the mountain and up that area, it can range from anywhere around 60 pounds per square inch all the way down to about 23 pounds per square inch.
My goodness.
And so that's the problem that we're trying to adjust for. And I can't actually, to be direct, answer your question about why are we still building, other than we want to sell lots. We want more people to help pay into the community. And that may not be a good idea.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm
the
not-
builders have already bought the lots. That train's left the station. It's whether they build on it or not.
Yeah, exactly. Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my 2 cents, I just was,
No, I agree.
watching what was going on here this
Right.
evening.
Right.
And it just, I know for myself, I just got some documents in the mail that have to do with my financial advisor.
If everyone in the audience
Sure.
And I want,
Everybody
cannot
can-
talk, online can't hear, so if you want to have conversations, if you don't mind to do it out
oh, it's okay.
there. No,
We're done.
Don't
We're
want to
done.
cut you
Mitzi
off.
said the bar's
We're going to
open.
go to dinner.
Attaboy.
Gary Nelson, we live
Yes,
in
sir.
Coatee Shores. I've just got a couple. One lady brought up the fact that having another, what did she call it? Another layer, giving it,
A bureaucracy.
perfect, that's it. And I agree with that 100%. Then another gentleman came up and said we could get grants, is that correct?
Yes. We can't, as a POA, we are not.
But he said
And that's not
there are
been-
other ones that
It
could.
doesn't apply to us.
All right, you talked about the 31 million. What about the 18 million that we have in reserves? Does that not count against that?
That is a question that the board will have to answer for you. Right now, there is a debate on whether the reserves are for new amenities, and the 31 million that we're talking about are new infrastructure to be built into our water and sewer. It is not about maintaining what we currently have. It's about increasing our capacity to be able to have that water pressure we were just discussing.
One last thing.
Sure.
Once we go ahead and sign this, we give you our vote. We can't take it back. You guys have it, and then you can do what you will with it. That's it.
So what was it Van Shaver referred to me as tricky? So I'm not trying to be tricky with you, but I will say that just because you've given that does not mean that the board will decide to execute it. And you're right, when you sign it, you can't, well, you could take it back and tear it up, but I mean, once the 51% is hit and you've approved it, you're right. That's done. That step is done. But it doesn't mean that step will be executed. And so even if, and I'll keep repeating it until you believe me, even if you have all this information, all the stuff that you really think, and even if you give me 51%, I cannot tell you with any surety that it will get past legislation to the point where it will go through and Bob's our uncle. I can't tell you that. So I can tell you there's some getting off points where we can go, nope, we don't want to do that. And at that point, the board can act and say, those 51 signatures are no longer valid.
I got it. But it still remains the same, that you guys are making that decision.
The board is,
Not
I'm
us
not.
anymore. The board is making that decision, not us.
Well, the board is made up of property owners that the property owners put in place. So I kind of feel like if we start talking about the board as them and us, that's a problem.
All right, I'm done.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Hi, Mike Anderson from Tellico. We talk about all this infrastructure changing and building, but you know what? How many buildable lots do we still have available? 1,350. Charge each new build permit $10,000, and that puts 13 approximately $13,500,000 into the coffers to help cover the infrastructure increase for the
Well, I got to tell you.
That would be a buy-in
Last
fee.
year, I
We
brought
tried.
up putting $2,500 on a buy-in, and everybody had a coronary.
these are new builds,
That's-
not on everybody.
That was new bills. It wouldn't be on everybody. You could do it on new bills.
And I mean, the builders are making
That's still a buy-in.
heck of a lot of money on all these properties, and they're cutting down all the trees. I've been here 4 years, and I've seen so many changes in Tellico, and they haven't been for the better. We're losing the feel of a forested community. I go down the street now, I don't get any shade in the middle of the summer because every tree is taken down out of the property. So charge these people. You know, if you have a product in business that's selling really well, what do? You raise the price. It cuts down the demand, and it also gives you more money in order to do
That's
something.
definitely an option.
That's all I
can't-
want to say.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That's definitely an option.
Scott Fultroy, I live in Kahidi, and right now that statement about selling Kahidi sounds pretty good.
Yeah, no, yeah, maybe.
So, I haven't been here very long, but, yeah, I haven't been here very long, but I echo that gentleman's statement as far as, different feel of the neighborhoods now. The other aspect is, you asked us to sign something, and I don't think there's enough there for us to make a decision. I'm a former utility guy as well, engineering background with a business background as well, and needed a lot more business case, scenarios to come up with something. So right now, I honestly believe that we're trying to force something through when we don't have enough information. I don't really care what the timeline is for the legislators because they're on their own schedule. They're not on ours.
Correct.
We need to put them on our schedule, and if that means waiting a little bit, tapping the brakes, then tap the brakes. Because right now, I can't sign that. And your point about the intent of that one line that was highlighted.
Yep.
If it says that in that contract, guess what? That's what it means.
Yeah.
And that's what it can mean,
Yeah.
even though it says something different in the next line.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
it needs to be straightened out.
Well, that actually is not a matter of straightening out. That's directly from your declaration. That's
Okay,
the problem
well-
that you need to understand.
Okay.
And if you read that, you're going to have the same feeling I did when I read it. Because the paragraph above it says, I can give away the roads without
Exactly.
anybody's permission.
As far as utilities work on economies of scale. So
Right.
houses per mile of line, per mile of gas pipe, the more people there are on a line, the less expensive it's going to be.
Sure.
So that's what we need to look at. So, we did apparently there was a study about, Loudon Utilities, there was a study, I haven't seen those, all right? I would like to see 3 different scenarios up there. Our self-funded, the Water Authority, and then Loudon, or whoever else would be involved.
Well,
Because
let
the
me
small-
explain
Excuse me, I'm
Loudon
not done
first.
yet, excuse me.
I'm sorry, my apologies.
So the less people there are, with us self-funding it or a water authority, which I think would, again, with the idea of building new buildings and, new equipment, new employees, whatever the case, there's only one place it can go, and that's up. So the other aspect is look at the economies of scale. One of the gentlemen said, yeah, we would incorporate other customers' debt, but at the same time, the customers of that utility would incorporate our costs as well, too. So it's a two-way street there. So again, more scenarios, a business case, again, that precludes the plan, which we don't have a business plan as far as I'm concerned.
Sure. No,
All right.
can't argue.
As far as information, put it on the website, we'll figure it out. All right, thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mike Kirk from Chota Hills. Assuming that the Water Authority is approved and it becomes an actual entity, where does the initial operating funds for the Water Authority come from? Maybe that was on the eye
Budget.
chart, but I missed it.
It actually they will have income day one because they're getting all the water bills are coming
Yeah.
to them. So they're going to have income the day they start. And that income over a month basis would be enough to cover salaries month 1.
Okay, so wouldn't be, in addition to the assets that we would be transferring, there would be no money that we would be transferring?
At this point, that's my position. However, in doing a business plan and doing the multiple options that we are discussing, that may turn out to not be the same.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
You bet.
Hi, my name is Mary, and I'm from Tellico, and I have a question about going up high level about our water quality. There are a number of issues involved with our water that could cause serious liabilities to the POA and this board if we don't show that we have someone monitoring the quality of the water. There are replete examples of potential Legionella throughout our storage tanks. As you know, I assume that standing water can grow the Legionella bacteria. And we just don't have the capabilities for that kind of sophisticated monitoring that's required. It only takes one person to pass away from waterborne illness to really cause a lot of problems. So I wonder what is involved with the board. Are they going to be indemnified against lawsuits for the water quality? We are already advised to boil the water if we have anyone who's immunocompromised, because, yes, that's part of the water. If you read the water report. So there requires...
I'm sorry, I didn't know that. I apologize.
Well, look at the latest report that was published. Anyway, water quality is an issue that I would like to raise before everybody here, is we're all older. There are a number of people that are ill, and they would be ill-advised to drink the water right out of the tap. So what is the plan for the actual service that you're really delivering, which is potable water? That's all.
Thank you.
Irene Roberts from Tellico.
Yes, ma'am.
And I thank you for all the work that you have done already on this. However, I do not think we're at the point where we can make a proper informed decision on all this. We need a lot more information before any of us can decide, is it a good idea or is it not a good idea?
Yes, ma'am.
And therefore, I agree with some of the other people. I think the petition should be retracted, and we should get all the information out there, the comparison on the costs with our various options, and then we should be able to make an informed decision on whether to go ahead with this or not. And the other suggestion that I have, and I made it at the last meeting to the attorney, I believe that the Tellico Village residents should be allowed to elect the Water Authority Board. It shouldn't cost any more money because you would do it in October along with your POA board elections. I just feel that we only elect certain amount of board members every year. And if you allow the villagers to elect the members to the Water Authority Board, I think that would be a better idea. Thank you.
I'll definitely take that in consideration. Go ahead, sir.
Dirk Leach from Coyote, and I know this is my second bite at the apple, so I'll keep it really short. So one point that I probably failed to make clearly is some of us, and I put myself in that bucket, might be a lot more inclined to simply pay an extra $92 a month, which is...
There are some people who said that they
right, for
absolutely
5 years,
don't care.
and be done with it.
Yeah.
Right? Rather than, in my view, shoot the squirrel with an elephant rifle and get a water authority in place. Okay.
And I can't argue that fact. In fact, there's a lot of, I know everybody believes that I'm the one who's just pushing this and want it. It's not true. I'm the one who went out and found this as an option. And if it doesn't work, it just doesn't work and we move on. But I think it's important enough that I keep putting it out there and I keep getting you the information, pardon me, till we know it's not good. Or we know, wow, this could pay out. And until that happens, I have no argument with anything you've said.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Mary Gaddy, and I just had one question for clarification. You had mentioned during the presentation that there's approximately $18 million in cash reserves, and
Yes.
there's a discussion within the board. One group kind of thinks it should be for repair, maintenance, and replace. Others on the board feel that should also include monies for new expenditures, capital expenditure.
Correct.
Depending upon, I don't know if that's just a moot point, if it's just going to continue to be a discussion, or if you have to land on it's either A or it's B. And if it is that, what effect, if any, does that decision have on the water authority or the pros and cons of
It
these
has a
different
lot of-
scenarios?
It has
that
a
you're-
lot to do with
Okay.
that. And that's why, that will have to be part of this study or business plan or presentation of where the money's coming from and how it will be developed and all those things.
So the board has to come to a decision during the next month or so that you can put that into that plan? Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You bet.
Hi, Chet, thanks for your, this is Ray Sloaney, and I'm from Tomotley. Thanks for your patience with everybody today. I appreciate it. I don't envy what you've been through at all. I do have one follow-up, though, and I think, words matter and communications matter, and maybe it's my misunderstanding, but there seems to be some confusion both in this cover letter and in what you said is the consent letter that went out. The cover letter says that the Board of Directors unanimously supports creating a public water authority. When one reads that, you think that by signing this, it's a done deal.
And,
Okay?
and that's,
So
that's a statement that I can't argue with and agree with, and it's not good.
Okay, the second thing is, when you go through, you said this was given to you.
Yes.
The exact words,
Yes.
you can't change any of the words.
Those were given to me by our attorney and by the advice of the legislation.
Okay,
So
because,
can I change them? Sure.
well,
Yeah.
the first paragraph says proposing,
Yeah.
which sort of is a weasel word, gives you a chance to get out. The second paragraph says it's going to reduce our costs, but we don't know that.
Well, that's absolutely valid.
At this point. And when you go to paragraphs 3 and 4, it intends to transfer, which again is a weasel word. But the bottom line, the bottom paragraph catches you, says the desire to transfer, which is almost like, well, none of the rest of the weasel words matter because we want to do this. And is there any way of rewording this so people are more comfortable? Because everything you said, nothing's going to go through until everything is presented by the
Correct.
15th.
Well,
If-
nothing's
if
going to
you-
go through even beyond that.
Yeah.
Like I said, I need to keep repeating it.
Yeah,
If
but-
everybody, after I present in January 15, goes, we like it.
Yeah.
And I send it over to the legislation and they start doing stupid things to it, which unfortunately, I have to tell you, that's a possibility. I don't think it's a real possibility, but it is a possibility. And if they do, that's my off-ramp. I'm not going to do that.
Sure. And I guess I'm trying to get to the point of, if you, somehow, whether you made this where people thinking it's still in consideration. So instead of the word desire, you use is considering to transfer, or instead of proposing, you use the word considering to create.
Sure.
It may be more palatable to people.
Understood.
But again, you may not have the authority.
I don't know that I have the latitude to do that, but I can ask the question for sure.
Okay, thank you.
I can raise those questions.
Mark Sagawa, Mealacqua. Matter of fact, I'm about as far south in Mealacqua as you can possibly go. My water pressure's fine.
Yeah.
But I'm going to kind of approach this macro because I feel like the mental midget in a room with some brilliant people here today. As far as communications, this issue should never have been buried in the telegram. There should be individual letters going out or emails going out specifically regarding this issue.
Okay?
Okay, otherwise, people sort through it, they don't get it all, and they don't see all the information.
Christiane, who was here earlier, made a very, very good point, and that is the board should be elected by us, not appointed by
The board.
the Water Authority.
No, yes, I understood. You mean it shouldn't be appointed by our board?
No, it should be
To be there.
appointed by us, or elected by us, because there's a sense often that the board and the various committees are rather incestuous. Okay, and lastly, on a very micro level, would you folks, would this still continue to be part of the POA dues, and you would pay the Water Authority accordingly, or would we be paying the Water Authority directly?
It depends on how, in terms of your water bill?
Yeah.
You'd be paying the Water Authority directly.
So our dues would, all right, so that portion, would that portion that we've been funding come out of, reduce our dues?
It's not coming out of your dues, it's coming out of what you pay the water bill.
No, I understand that.
So if you pay it to them, it's no different than you're
but the-
paying it to us.
But when we're paying for the maintenance and everything, the POA is paying for the maintenance and construction and upkeep, correct?
Of that, yes. And so, to be very clear about this, because our current Public Works basically funds themselves with the water charges that we do and the installs that we do, Public Works is, not Public Works, I apologize, and I need to be clear about this. The Water and Sewer Department of the Public Works is completely funded by that. They don't, your dues don't ever touch their
Okay,
their
that's what I
costs.
was clarifying.
Yeah, so when I pull them out, my operating budget doesn't change.
Because there are some, as you speak, there are some people that are
Yeah,
under the
they're
impression that, well,
self-sufficient.
gee, now they're getting my 172 and I'm paying them.
Right.
But that's why the separation occurs.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the answer to that one. Any other questions? Okay. Y'all have a lovely evening. Thank you for coming in your concerns.